It seemed at first to be nothing more than a family photograph, and yet the woman's gloves hid a terrible truth. Dr. Amelia Richardson slowly removed the tissue paper from the wooden frame, her hands calm even as she felt a quiet tension build inside her. It was a cool October morning in 2024, and she was standing in her office at the American Legacy Museum in Richmond, Virginia, where she worked as senior curator of post-Civil War African American history. The package had arrived 3 days earlier with no return address. Inside had been only a brief note, "This belonged to my family. I believe it should be seen and understood by more people. Please tell her story." The photograph beneath the wrapping sat in an ornate Victorian frame, decorated with carefully carved details. The image itself was in remarkable condition for its age, a formal studio portrait taken in 1875. In the lower corner, the photographer's embossed mark could still be seen: J. Morrison, portrait artist, Richmond, VA. The photograph showed a black family of 6 posed in the formal style common at the time. A dignified man in his 40s stood at the center, one hand resting on a worn wooden chair. Beside him sat a woman of similar age, upright and composed, her posture calm and assured. 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, were arranged around them, their ages appearing to range from about 6 to 16. All were dressed in fine clothing that suggested care, pride, and growing prosperity. Amelia had studied hundreds of such photographs over the years. In the decade after the Civil War and emancipation, many black families who had gained freedom and some financial stability chose to sit for formal portraits. These images were powerful statements of dignity and success, visual proof of humanity in a society that had long denied it. Still, something about this photograph immediately drew Amelia in. The family's clothing was typical for well-off African Americans of the 1870s, the father in a tailored suit, the children neatly dressed, but the mother's clothing included one striking detail. She wore long gloves that reached far past her elbows, almost to her shoulders, hidden beneath the 3/4 sleeves of her elegant dress. The gloves appeared to be made of fine leather or silk, dyed a dark color that matched her outfit. At a time when women's gloves in portraits usually stopped at the wrist or forearm, these were unusually long. Amelia leaned closer to study the woman's face. Her expression was calm and dignified, yet there was something deeper in her eyes, an awareness, perhaps even sorrow, that seemed to look straight through the camera and across nearly 150 years. The woman's left hand rested gently in her lap, the gloved fingers carefully arranged. Her right hand lay on the arm of the chair, the glove smooth and perfectly fitted. Why such long gloves? Amelia wondered. Fashion changed, of course, but this choice felt deliberate. She carefully turned the photograph over. Written in faded ink were the words, "The Freeman Family, Richmond, Virginia, June 1875. May we never forget." Amelia photographed the inscription with her phone and turned back to the image. Her instincts, sharpened by years of research, told her this photograph held a deeper story. She spent the rest of the day trying to trace the photograph's origin. The sender had given no contact details, and the postmark only showed it was mailed from Richmond, with no names beyond Freeman. Amelia had to rely on the photograph itself and historical records from the city in 1875. She began with the photographer, J. Morrison. Museum records showed that James Morrison was a Scottish immigrant who opened a photography studio on Broad Street in 1867. His studio served both white and black clients, which was rare at the time. Many photographers refused to photograph African Americans or separated their services. Morrison's business records, preserved in the Virginia Historical Society archives, showed that he was successful until his death in 1881. His studio was known for high-quality work and relatively progressive views. That explained why a prosperous black family might choose him. Unfortunately, Morrison's client books had been lost, likely destroyed in late 19th century fires. Amelia returned to the photograph and scanned it at the highest resolution possible. She uploaded the file and examined it using specialized software that adjusted contrast and lighting to reveal hidden details. As she zoomed in, subtle clues appeared. The father's bare hands showed calluses and signs of hard work, suggesting a skilled trade. The children's faces showed a mix of pride and nervousness, common in young people sitting for a rare portrait. Still, Amelia kept returning to the gloves. When she enhanced the image further, she noticed something she had missed before. The gloves were not fully smooth. Small bulges and faint indentations suggested something beneath the fabric. She zoomed in on the woman's left arm. Near the wrist, the glove fabric looked slightly stretched. Digital enhancement revealed uneven texture beneath, as if the skin underneath was scarred. The right arm showed the same pattern. The gloves were carefully made and fitted, but they could not fully hide the damage beneath. Amelia leaned back, her thoughts racing. Burn scars, disease, or something else? Whatever the cause, it had led a woman in 1875 to carefully hide her arms in a portrait meant to show dignity and success. Amelia knew she needed expert help. She called Dr. Marcus Chen, a colleague at Virginia Commonwealth University, who specialized in forensic analysis of historical photographs. "Marcus, I have a photograph from 1875, Amelia said. "There's something in it that doesn't sit right with me. I think you can help." Marcus agreed and asked her to send the file. 3 days later, he arrived at the museum with portable scanning equipment. He carefully positioned the photograph under controlled light and began scanning it in sections, capturing details far beyond normal resolution. "This is excellent work," Marcus said. "Morrison really knew his craft. The composition and exposure are impressive, especially for the time." Amelia nodded. "Please focus on the mother's gloves," she said. "I think they're hiding something." Once the scan was complete, Marcus loaded the image into forensic software and began applying filters. As contrast increased and textures sharpened, details emerged. He examined the woman's face, noting the strength and sadness in her expression. Then he focused on the gloves. Using infrared and texture mapping, patterns appeared beneath the fabric. "This is remarkable," Marcus said quietly. "Amelia, these gloves are covering serious scarring." He pointed to the screen. "These straight lines and circular marks are consistent with restraint injuries, chains, shackles." Amelia felt her stomach tighten. Marcus continued, "And here, these marks look like lash scars, repeated trauma over many years." Silence filled the room. The gloves were no longer a fashion detail, but a deliberate cover. "She was enslaved," Amelia said softly. "These are scars of slavery." Marcus nodded. Based on healing patterns, the injuries dated to years before the photograph, before 1865. Amelia now saw the image differently. Taken 10 years after emancipation, it showed a family that had achieved stability and success. Yet the mother carried lasting evidence of violence. Marcus documented his findings carefully. Amelia began searching for the family's identity. She reviewed property records, business licenses, and Freedmen's Bureau files. After days of research, she found a match. In 1871, a carpenter named Daniel Freeman bought a home in Jackson Ward. His wife was listed as Clara Freeman, with 4 children whose ages matched the photograph. Then Amelia found a Freedmen's Bureau marriage application from 1865. Daniel was listed as free before the war. Clara was described as formerly enslaved, last held by a Hardwell family in Lancaster County. Under distinguishing marks it read, "Severe scarring on both arms from restraints and punishment." Amelia knew she had found them. Further research showed Clara's strength and resilience. Census records showed the family renting in 1870, owning a home by 1875, and running a business by 1880. Amelia searched for descendants and soon received an email from Dorothy Freeman Williams, Clara's great-great-granddaughter. Dorothy recognized the description immediately and agreed to meet. When Dorothy arrived at the museum, she carried a worn leather folder filled with family documents. Seeing the photograph, she whispered, "That's them." She shared Clara's handwritten account from 1889, written after Clara learned to read and write. Clara described her life in slavery, the punishment, the shackles, the lashings, and the scars that remained. Dorothy explained how Clara escaped during the war and reached Richmond, where she gained her freedom and met Daniel. Dorothy shared letters, diaries, and oral histories Daniel had written that Clara covered her arms, not from shame, but because she wanted her children to see strength, not suffering. Ruth Freeman's diary confirmed this, describing her mother's quiet grief and fierce commitment to education. Clara became active in church and mutual aid societies, encouraging other women to build new lives. Clara's letter to Ruth before her wedding explained the photograph clearly. She wore the gloves so the image would show who they were in freedom, not what slavery had done to her. The scars were real, but not the full truth. The truth was family, dignity, and survival. Amelia built an exhibition around Clara's story, placing it in the larger history of slavery and Reconstruction. She showed both the cruelty of the past and the strength that followed. Records showed Daniel's business success, Clara's role as manager, and her later recognition as a property owner. A newspaper interview from 1888 quoted Clara saying that dignity and freedom mattered more than money. In May 2025, the museum opened the exhibition. The photograph was displayed alongside the enhanced analysis that revealed the hidden scars. Clara's descendants stood together, 5 generations strong. Amelia spoke about Clara's choice to hide her scars as an act of control and self-definition. Dorothy spoke of her ancestors' words. She wanted the world to see what they built, not what was done to them. The exhibition drew tens of thousands of visitors and reshaped how people thought about historical photographs. Amelia later wrote that images often hold meaning not only in what they show, but in what their subjects choose to hide. The museum created the Clara Freeman Research Fellowship to continue uncovering such stories. And through it all, Clara Freeman's quiet strength continued to speak, through gloves, through scars, and through generations who remembered.